Welcome to the noon meeting of the Rotary Club of Baton Rouge. Before we start, please remember to silence or put your cell phones in airplane mode as they affect our audio equipment. The invocation will be led by Leela Mae Wilkes. After the invocation, please stay standing for the pledge that will be led by past President Haggai Davis, and after the pledge, the four-way test.
We thank you for our many blessings. We thank you for our freedoms. We thank you for our health. We thank you for our happiness. We pray that for those that are sick and all over the world as well as in our community, please touch them and heal them. And we pray that as Rotary members, we will always follow the four-way test. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
And now Brian Haldane will introduce today's guests.
Please join me in welcoming our guests today. Now, as I introduce our visitors, would you please stand to be recognized and remain standing? Be recognized. Members, please hold your applause until all have been introduced. First of all, guests of our speaker, David Zito and Shea Britton are guests of Craig Greene. We're standing. Also, I want to welcome Frank Ardwan, a guest of Beverly Chopin, Janet Daniel, a guest of David Daniel, Gray Mullins, a guest of Scott Guidry, Shannon Foreman, a guest of Sherry McBeath, Ned Fazzulo and Jason Greene, guests of Larry McKee, Terrell Kent, a guest of Todd Sterling, Mark Hollingsworth, a guest of Wes Ulrich, Melissa Bazet, Tom Greene, and Kathy Greene, guests of Stephen Winkler, Wesley Moore, John Billisoli, a guest of Mike Zobrist, Jeff Kopeski, a guest of Stephanie Cargyle, and Jean Blumberg, guest of Barry Blumberg. Please help me welcome our guests today.
Welcome. Today's head table, to my right, your left, Haggai Davis, past president of our club, and Customer Services Manager, General Informatics, who led us in the pledge, John Chumba, President, CEO, International Consulting Group, Mike Manning, also past president, he's President, CEO, Greater Baton Rouge Food Bank, Jerry Hobdy, who led us in the four-way test, Executive Director of Community Relations at the Baton Rouge Community College. I'm Mawe Takyi, your club president. Our speaker, Dr. Craig Greene, who will be more formally introduced, Troy Prevost, Vice President, Prime Occupational Medicine, and Leela Mae Wilkes, President, Brown Eagle Group Incorporated, who led us in the invocation. Your head table. And now Mike Manning will come up and help me with a special presentation for members who have had perfect attendance.
You'll be right over here.
All right. Yeah. So we'll start with those who have had perfect attendance for 1 year, and for those, if you don't mind just standing up, if you're here. Rob Dagrapont, Jim Horton, Cliff Ivy, Mary Joseph, Craig Livingston, Thomas Nash, Carol Patan, Phil Rabenhorse, and Laura Thomas. Go to 2 years, Michelle Carriere, Chard Richard, and Jeff Simmerman. 3 years perfect attendance, Thomas Brown, Scott Guidry, Chris Harrell, Tina Holland, Mike Manning, Alicia Murphy, Craig Stevens, Emily Stitch, and Tom Wagaspack. Four years, perfect attendance for 4 years, that's great. Margaret King, Jan Ross, Cindy Seegers, and Ann Trappe. And now for 5 years perfect attendance, Barbara Auten and John Pugh. And then 6 years perfect attendance, Mawe Takyi. 7 years perfect attendance, Marvin Borgmeyer. Stand up, Marvin. Charlene Montalero and Doc Suez. 8 years perfect attendance, Haggai Davis and Helen Graf. 11 years perfect attendance, Mike DePaul, David LaCour. 12 years, Robert Levy, Jim McElwain, and Stephen Winkler. 13 years, perfect attendance, Jim Firnberg. And then 14 years, Berlin Perkins and David Shirley. All right, and now we have a special recognition for those who are 15 years or more. Please come up and take a picture with Mike Manning. 15 years, Carl Stages. Yeah. 22 years, Ken Best. 23 years, perfect attendance, Warren Birkett. 25 years, Charles Spencer. 33 years, Ronnie Toomer. Congratulations, and thank you for all you've done for this club.
Mawe, 38 years. 38 years of perfect attendance.
38 years.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Now, John Chumba will give us an update on WASH.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm about to give an update for projects that this club is doing in eastern side of Africa. We'll talk about three things. Number one is talk about the scope and the impact of the project. I'll talk about the goals, the partnership, and the funding between this club and our partner club in Kenya. I'll also talk about the status of the project, implementation, timelines, and also completion. We're reporting to you because you funded this grant. This grant has two components. This project, again, is in Kenya. We have a construction component that involves construction of bathrooms, drilling boreholes, and also hand washing stations in about 7 schools in Kenya. We have a training component where we're teaching our young boys and girls about hygiene and especially menstrual hygiene for the girls. We're impacting 7 schools in a particular geographical region in Kenya with over 1,500 students. Again, this project is WASH. WASH stands for Water, Sanitation, and Health. The goal is to bring sustainable water and hygiene infrastructure to schools in Kenya. This partnership is a result of the partnership between this club and the club in Kenya. The club in Kenya is the international club, is the host club, and then this club is the international club. The project costed about $120,000 as a result of the efforts for this club and the Rotary International. They did about 60, and the balance of 60 comes from Kenya. Next one, the project status. The project was awarded way back in 2018. It was a competitive grant. We competed with about 11 countries across the globe. We were one of the 5 countries selected. The construction started in April of this year. We're about 45% complete. We hope to be complete in December of this year, and we'll continue reporting in accordance with Rotary International guidelines. Those are some of the pictures. It shows some of the toilets for the men, for the boys and the girls, left and right, and some of the pictures of the people, what they're doing, and that's pretty much it. So again, I thank you for the service and thank you for contributing. Special recognition to Sherry. She's been on our toes. Janet Pez was a grant chair before I took over. I just, did the final touches. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And again, thank you for members of this club and our club foundation that has raised over $60,000 for this project. It's been a really impactful project. August is membership month. If you submit an application during the month of August, you will be eligible to win a $200 gift certificate to Ruth's Chris. So all members of the membership committee, if you don't mind please standing, just so we can recognize you, chaired by Stephen Winkler, and all the hard work you've done. Next week, Wednesday, the 25th, our speaker is Mark Benfield, and he'll be speaking to us about the river of plastic. Craig, thanks for speaking to our club. Every week, the Rotary Club Foundation donates a book in honor of the speaker to Crestworth Elementary, and this week, the book is Conquest by Sam Maggs. Thank you. And now Troy Prevost will introduce our speaker.
It is not often you get to introduce somebody that you've watched grow up, you've gotten to know their family, and admire tremendously, and then realize that he's so much younger than you that you want to be like him when you grow up. It kind of brings you back down to earth. But I only have 2 minutes. I told Sherry, I said, there's so much on here. He says, you got 2 minutes. So we're going to go through it pretty quick. Dr. Craig Greene is an orthopedic surgeon at Baton Rouge Orthopedic Clinic. He also chairs the Public Service Commission, currently District 2, and has been also the Chief of Staff at Our Lady of the Lake Regional Medical Center during his tenure. He's also a clinical assistant professor of orthopedic surgery at LSU Health Sciences Center, chief of orthopedic surgery at the Surgical Specialty Center. He was assigned by the governor during the early parts of the pandemic to lead and chaired the Public Health and Safety at Work Working Group. He was a gubernatorial appointee. He's also a member of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, Orthopedic Trauma Association, and he's board certified in sports medicine. We could go on forever about his relief efforts and what he's done to serve other people outside of just practicing here locally in Baton Rouge. He's been to Haiti. He's organized medical teams to Haiti. He's organized medical teams to West Africa. He's in Honduras, where he's done some mission work with his daughter. He completed his undergraduate degree at LSU in 1996, where he was a member of the football team as a strong safety from 1992 to 94. He received his medical degree from Louisiana State University in New Orleans in 2000, completed his residency as Texas A&M. Don't hold that against him. Department of Orthopedic Surgery. It's a good residency, I promise. And he did a fellowship in orthopedic traumatology and complex fracture care at probably the top trauma center and trauma education in the world, not just the United States. So you can see where his education is. And he did that in Washington and Seattle. Also, that's not enough. He had to complete his MBA at Yale with honors and is passionate about societal and healthcare sustainability. He's a veteran of the United States Naval Reserve, where he has served as a commander. Thank you for your service. He grew up in Merrigan. He actually grew up in Livonia, but he doesn't want to. I think he wants to. Merrigan sounds better. He has been seriously overmarried to Kristen since 1996, and they now live in Baton Rouge with their 5 children, Hadley, Cass, Gabe, Ryder, and Boomer. They attend Healing Place Church. He was elected a special election in the fall of 2017 to fill an unexpired term on District 2 and was re-elected for the full term in the fall of 2018. His current term expires in 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, a future governor of the state of Louisiana, Dr. Craig Greene.
Well, thank you so much, Troy and Mawe. I know we have a short period of time, so I'm going to, Abraham Lincoln's 3 things were be brief, be brief, and be brief. So I'm so overjoyed that my parents and my brother are here. I ran into Mr. Tommy Teeple earlier, and I haven't seen a life-size version of him since I was staying at his house in my teenage years, and he had a life-size cutout right outside of his son's room, and I'd run out and go, "Oh, Mr. Tommy." And so it's good to see you again. He asked me, what should we call you? Doctor, commander, commissioner. So I was going to tell him, but I thought I would tell all of y'all. One day I come home, and you have to know my wife. She's beautiful and funny, and she, like my parents and my brother, are anchors in my life. And I thought I'd joke with her a little bit, and I said, "Hey, listen, how about Mondays we go with doctor, Tuesdays maybe commander, Wednesdays commissioner, maybe Thursdays chief, Fridays, Saturdays, so you just mix it up." And she goes, "How about every day we just go with son of a bitch?" So you can call me anything you want. I'll probably answer. My dad's brother and I were in the same medical school class. His name is Craig Greene. So you can imagine we go up for grades, and I'd go, "Now, which one am I?" But all growing up, he was Big Craig, and I was Little Craig. So my cousin recently broke his ankle and had surgery in Lafayette. So I got his surgery arranged, and the surgeon reached back to me. He goes, "Hey, Little Craig, it all went well." So I have to tell a story about my mom, and I didn't know she would be here, so I'm going to tell it anyway. She's both, my mom and my wife, I have a saying that they think that I hung the moon, but they know that I didn't. And that keeps me grounded. And I'll never forget, I was graduating from Yale, which is a big deal, from a kid from Merrigan. I slept in Merrigan, but I worked in Livonia. So I was graduating, and it was a big deal. All the family was there, and I put on my tie, and she walks up to me, and she's adjusting my tie, and she goes, "Craig, your dad and I are so proud of you. You've really accomplished way more in life than we ever thought you would." Me too. And so they really are anchors, and I think, and I'll get to it in a few minutes, but in today's ever-changing world, we need anchors more than anything. And there's no one better for that than family. So I do tell a story of Einstein. I'm no Einstein, but apparently when Einstein would go around speaking, he had a chauffeur that was his doppelganger. They looked just alike. So after a number of speeches, a number of years, the chauffeur goes, "I've heard this so many times, I could give this one." So Einstein goes, "Well, go for it. Go for it, okay." So he gets up in front of this auditorium, and the real Einstein's sitting in the back acting as the chauffeur, and the guy nails it. He delivers the entire speech flawlessly. And at the very end, the guy in the middle raises his hand and asks a very elaborate question. And the real Einstein's in the back, and he goes, "Oh, he's stuck now." And the guy just shakes his head, and he goes, "That's a very good question. But that question is so easy, I'm going to let my chauffeur in the back answer it." And I'll tell you, Mawe was asking me, "How do you do what you do?" And I have incredible people around me. My parents always told me, "You become like those you're around. So surround yourself like people you want to be like." And David and Shay are here. I walked in, and the first thing someone told me is, Peggy at your office is amazing, and I agree. My medical staff is amazing. I have incredible partners. So, and this looks like a group that it's good to be around because it elevates the game of your game and each other's. So I'm very grateful for that. I had a talk arranged about Public Service Commission stuff and transmission, distribution, generation. But a lot's happened in the world in the last week. My wife left last Thursday to drop my daughter off at college, and she came back Monday. And I said, the world's changed a lot since you left. The Taliban took over Afghanistan, and on severity, an earthquake worse than 2010 happened in Haiti. So I could bore you about some of the specifics of electricity, but maybe we can do that offline. And mainly I want to reserve this for questions at the end. But I'd like to talk a little bit about Haiti. The last time I was here, it was in reference to the mission trip that we went on, and out of that spawned, people would bring me a $500 check to my office made out to me. No. So we created a 501c3 that tucks under Graf, and it's called Dr. Greene Charity. And so people, they always everybody wants to be a part of some sort of help, whether it's giving your time, your talent, or your treasure. And sure enough, on my board for where this money goes, which has to be approved by the Baton Rouge Area Foundation, is myself, my mom, my preacher and workout partner, Mike Heyman of Healing Place Church, and retired General Russell Honore. So when there's disasters of some sort, we pass around ideas and all agree, and we distribute money. Well, General Honore sent me something 2 days ago. He said, hey, just let's think about this. And it was the Global Alliance for Disaster Source Allocation, especially for those with disabilities. And so I flipped it over to Graf, and I said, copied everybody. I said, let's agree on this. And we agreed. Gave $10,000. And the guy from Graf emailed me on the side. He goes, you only have $8,600. Well, let's get to rounding up. So I love what y'all did with the water, and I think that there will never be a lack of need for giving. I was just talking to one of my mentors on the way here. Ministry is an overflow, and at home, I can only love on my wife and kids if my cup is full. And when you're on an airplane, they say if it goes down, you have to put the oxygen on yourself. So in these trying times, we all need to help each other, take care of each other, but take care of yourself and put your own oxygen on. And out of that overflow, I think that we can do the best we can to help others. When out of that too, my mom and I went to medical centers of West Africa, and that's in Cameroon, West Africa. It took us 7 different flights to get there, 2.5 days. I caught a bit of Africa on my way there and experienced it on my way back. That was tough from a gastrointestinal standpoint. But while we were there was French-speaking people, and my mom is fluent in French, so we would do these very complex surgeries with very rudimentary devices that had been taken out of people in the United States and just ship over there because they'll take anything. And the whole time, and when I'm operating in surgery here, I just tell my assistant, hold this, do this. But I would have to tell my mother, who's at the end of the table, not scrubbed in, and she would tell the assistant what to do. So the surgery was like 4 times longer because of lack of communication. And we probably operated for 10 to 12 hours for 7 days straight, and there's lots of mosquitoes. It was very hot. And on the very last day, everybody was super helpful. The very last day, the gentleman that had helped me the entire week, at the end of the most difficult surgery of the entire week, he looks at me, and in flawless English, he says, boy, you got the tiger by the tail on this one, huh, Doc? You know English. Why have we not been talking this whole time? And I use that to say, I think right now, whether it's the virus, which I'll mention my thoughts on, or natural disasters that are occurring, or the Taliban in Afghanistan, it seems like we have the tiger by the tail. But the most important thing is that I think we communicate. And the first thing to failing in communication is not trying. So I just wanted to share that with you because it can be very overwhelming what's going on in the world today. But it's gatherings like this that fire us up to say, well, let's keep trying. I'm Chief of Staff at Our Lady of the Lake, and I was on a panel last week with Clay Young and Katie O'Neill talking about the vaccine. It's a very polarizing discussion. The hospital is over 90% of the occupants right now have been unvaccinated or not vaccinated. The 10% that are there are in a bucket of over 80, you just don't make as many antibodies, chemotherapeutic patients, and end-stage renal disease, all of which are immunocompromised. So the people that are not getting it seem to be far-right people, which I'm a conservative, kind of right-central, and who think it's a government conspiracy, and someone in the black community think it's a white conspiracy. So Clay Young and I were trying to charge people up to get the vaccine, and sure enough, some people from the far-right side called me the next day, are you on the take? No, I'm not on the take. But you need to take the vaccine. And so I don't know what your thoughts are, but if you're in the middle, I highly encourage it. They're offering a bulletproof vest. And another analogy is like airbags. Have they hurt some people along the way? Probably. Have they saved a lot of lives? Yes. And right now there are people that need cancer surgery that can't get cancer surgery. If your mom needs a joint replacement, she cannot stay overnight. She has to go home the same day. And that's tough. So it's starting to impact people who have been vaccinated. And so I don't think it's mandate-ish, but I highly encourage it for yourself and the people you're around. I wanted to I want to just mention in closing, then I want to open it up to questions, that these are difficult times. And my mom and dad may share a story of when I was young, I used to push a tractor uphill intentionally. Who would do that? Like a little bitty tractor. And sometimes I still feel like I'm doing that. I'm trying to push difficult things. And one day I was thinking, and I'll just give you a little backstory. When I was in the Navy, it was in 2016, I was in Rhode Island at the War College, and I was doing officer training school. And we had to make our bed perfectly, and it was very collegial. And my wife calls me. We only had about 15 minutes a day to talk. And she goes, hey, we need to talk. And I'm thinking, well, I haven't done anything wrong. That's what usually follows those words of we need to talk. And so I sit down, and she goes, look, I thought and prayed a lot about this, and feel free to say no, but I really have it on my heart that we need to adopt a child with special needs, in particular Down syndrome. And the three main countries she'd done all the research are Colombia, Haiti, and China. Long story short, 18 months later, 6.5 inches of paperwork and a pile of money, and we have Boomer, which is my mom's family name. And Boomer is almost 6. He started kindergarten yesterday. I have one kid in college, 2 in high school, 1 in junior high, and 1 in pre-K. And he has to have a special helper with him everywhere he goes. And the special helper wasn't going to be there these next 3 days, so she emailed my wife, and she said, we loved having Boomer, but can he wait to come back until Monday? And so he's a lot of work, but he's well worth it. And most things that are worth it are a lot of work. And someone said to me once of people with Down syndrome, they said, you know, they don't know anything of judgment or discrimination. All they know is love. And the world sure needs more of that. And so even as I disagree with someone or someone disagrees with me, I think about how can I do that lovingly? Well, I'm rambling here a little bit, but when I was young, we used to show Brangus cattle. And I had a Brangus bull. And the way the Brangus bull would follow little old me around was my dad would tie him to a mule in the back of his veterinary practice with a 12-foot rope. And that young bull would jump and try to get away and snap, and that mule would just stay right there. Until the young bull learned, I'm not going to do that anymore. And when the mule wanted to go somewhere, the bull went there. And after a while, we unhooked it from the mule and put it on to me. By that time, the little bull had become a big bull, but he went wherever the rope led him. So one night I'm putting Boomer to bed, and he's all over the place. And I got a little frustrated, not physically, but just long day at work. come home, diapers, feeding, bedtime, bath time. And I feel like, no, I'm gonna show you, I'm your mule. And I felt God drop in my spirit, no, Craig, he's your mule. Because we all need a mule. And that is to keep us on the right path. So I can't thank y'all enough for having me. I'm sorry we didn't get into the nice presentation that my staff made, but I felt there were more looming topics than reminiscent of what I came here for in the past. And thank you for making this meeting have meaning and all the meaning that y'all provide in each other's lives and in our society. I would love to open it up for a few minutes of questions if we have time. Yes, sir.
There are hills in Maryland?
Hills? Yes, they're called levees.
Doc, what's your plan for Haiti? Is your team going to go down there, or what are you associated with?
So I read an article yesterday where a doctor said I'm the only surgeon. And I remember last time when the earthquake happened, I was driving down Bluebonnet with my wife, and I said, I wish I could do something. And she said, well, have you prayed about it? I'm like, well, that's a good idea. So we did, and within 24 hours, 3 different preachers called and said, hey, can you leave tomorrow? There's an orphanage with 50 children, all have femur fractures. And so we said, yes. I called my buddies in Houston. I said, what are y'all doing this weekend? They thought I was going to ask them to go fishing. And they go, nothing. I said, you want to go to Haiti? Like, oh, couldn't you have just asked us to send money? And so we flew to Miami. We waited, and we got down there and worked hard. And so we sort of respond to the need. So after that, when we formed our foundation, we could send teams, but those kind of need to be galvanized ahead of time. And so if they called right now, I would rearrange some things. Matter of fact, we can't do a lot of surgeries at the lake or in overnight stays, so it would be a good time for it. But we also have found organizations that are mobilized, embedded, and in need, and I think have alignment with what we would try to accomplish. And so if they called for me to participate, I would. But in the meantime, we're going to send some money.
During the winter storm, we lost power for 5 days, and the communication between energy and the public was poor, to say the least. It's confusing on what was online and what was reality. What are y'all doing to address energy and their communication with your customers?
So the question was, after the winter storm, the communication with Entergy was terrible. And what are we doing to address that? I not so lovingly, right after that, communicated to them that the way they communicate was unacceptable, and in my mind tied to any rate increases that they ask for. Because they're regulated in a monopoly, they don't have to care about that, but because we decide how much they make, they need to. And an example I gave them was when I was campaigning, I'd said, look, if my lights ever go out, I need to be the last one turned on. And I'm just going to go through the normal channels, almost like a secret shopper. I want to see how they treat normal people. And I'm at the end of the day, I'm a normal person. And so, sure enough, storm one Saturday morning, lights went out. I just texted the normal channels. And about, I don't know, probably mid-morning, my lights came back on. I was like, oh, that's good. It was midday. So we're having my son's birthday party that evening. And we had jumpies, the sport court lights were on, every light on my house was on. And I listen over at dark, and I hear my neighbor's generators running. And I think, this is not good. So I called my neighbor. I said, why is y'all's generator on? They said, we've been on the phone with Entergy for 3 hours with somebody in Oklahoma, and they're telling us that our lights are on. Hey, why would we call you if our lights were on? And why can't you listen to me and say, well, I'm going to do something about it? And so I called Entergy. 9 minutes later, a lineman came out, and there was an engineer at the end of the street who said, yeah, the fuse is flipped. They just got to flip the fuse. And they flipped the fuse, and it came back on. And so we've never had more ways to communicate than now. Why is communication so difficult with that? And so I get pretty fired up when I talk about it because I want them to do more. But I think I have their attention now, and it's going to be an iterative process.
Does the PSC have a database of complaints against individual companies and how they were resolved? And if so, where can you find that information?
does the PSC have a database of complaints that have been filed? And if so, where can you access that information? My office, I have a staff of people that all they do is handle complaints. And I get a report of those each month, and those are kept on file. Now, to my knowledge, those are not made public, but upon request, we can analyze them. And I think that's important because we look for recurring themes, data points that portend a trend line. And if multiple people are having the same complaints over time, that rises to the top of the list.
The business report had a recent issue about the top 100 companies, speaking of energy. They had, in the farther back, there was a list of the top 8 CEOs. You may know that the top 8 CEO was the guy from energy, and it was like multi-million dollars a year. How can you justify that?
So Entergy is a Fortune 200 company, one of only 2 that we have in Louisiana, and they really are important to Louisiana. But his salary is set by their board, and we set their rates, and they go to the market to get investors. And so they have to tell their investors we're going to make a lot of money, and they have to tell us we're not making enough money. And so we make sure they're not putting an extra jet on it. Is the Fortune 200 CEO salary commensurate with other Fortune 200 salary companies? I think the trend in overall CEO pay has been realized by everyone. It's too high, but that's not for me to specifically address, but we address overall performance and is that worthy of compensation? So I in no way make that much. I think it was $9.5 million. I don't know what other CEOs make a year.
More than that. 16 was his base pay.
Greg, you're an inspiration, and I know your parents are really proud of you. I'm very interested in the whole situation in Haiti because I read a book. It was something about Voodoo Mountain. It was a young lady from Baton Rouge named, I think it was Megan Boudreaux, went down there and set up a school. Talked about the hardships the kids go through there, many of them without parents. I guess I'm not really asking a question other than have you heard about her and the efforts that she made in Haiti?
The question is about Megan Boudreaux, who established a presence in Haiti after the last earthquake, and she still runs a very meaningful ministry there. Mom, do you have any updates on what she's doing, or?
Yeah, the earthquake hit, and then the tropical storm hit, okay? So it's in the southwestern part, and we just got an update. The school and the city is still viable, but they're just trying to get enough help for the injured. They're 9,600 disabled, and they upped the count today to over 2,000 killed. But in her area, she said they're trying to just remain sustainable. They have a school there and a whole, when we went, it's a whole town that she established, she and her husband Josh. So, but they're very hopeful and they're just receiving any help they can get. Like Craig said, most of the places are established now, the ministries that are there. And so they're trying to work with people who are already there instead of flying people.
And she is both embedded and I think her emphasis on a routine basis on education. Is that right? So, we need more like her.
On the topic of education, you mentioned you have a son with special needs. How did you in and how did you go about determining the best sources to help him get educated in a city like Baton Rouge?
So with regards to my special needs son and education and how did we determine, it's been extremely difficult. If you get federal money, you have to accommodate people with disability for educational purposes. And we had a very disappointing meeting with Basis Charter School that basically said if he can't do his homework, then that's on him. He's 5.5 and he has Down syndrome. I bet you're going to keep getting your government money. So now the only school that we could find was Parkview. And it's very difficult for them, I understand. But there's schools like St. Thomas More, there's some in Ascension where there's a pathway, and then they're also the ball boy on the basketball team or something, you know. So you can integrate, and I was was at a hotel in Biloxi, and there's someone who's about 25 with, special needs that was checking me into the hotel. And I was especially patient because I recognized that I ordinarily wouldn't be. And it reminded me I need to be, because if my son rose to that level, that would be incredible. And he's somebody's son, and he's doing the best he can, which is a good job. So it's very difficult, and it's hard to find the resources, and so we're figuring it out right now.
So how serious is this governor's run talk?
Well, I had contemplated it. I've decided I'm not running next year. I decided at my son's baseball game, or 2023, he kept looking back, and was I sitting there? Was I sitting there? And I'm fortunate that I have a job with meaning and purpose right now. And I also have young students that will come rotate with me, and their longing in life is to get into medical school and doing what it took me 14 years to learn how to do, and I've been doing for 15. So I feel like I'm right where I need to be, and that'll always be a possibility. And what inspired me is my dad was in the state senate as a veterinarian, and then he ran for governor in 1999. He didn't win, but he inspired me and so did my grandfather. He was a mayor but worked on the railroad, for citizen democracy. I think normal people ought to serve for as long as possible, and perhaps that means I'm unelectable, but I try to. It helps me to see patients, and hey, my knee hurts, and why does the CEO make so much money? Oh, which one do you want to talk about first? Or my lights don't come, something. So I feel like a pulse on what it's like to not be in a bubble, and so I'll consider it later in life. It's a thankless job. You can't please everyone, and I often joke that I don't think professional athletes will run for office because they have 100% approval rating. And in politics, if you're 50.1, you're crushing it. So maybe later. And in the meantime, the Bible says pray for those that have been established in leadership. So my prayers are with the current administrations, and even though we have different letters behind our name, that doesn't mean they don't have some good ideas along the way. And everybody's going to look back and say that was a terrible idea on some things. So I would appreciate your vote in the future if that works out.
One last one over there. Last one.
Good thing or bad thing about having kids in other states, you gotta go see them. And you learn about what other people are doing outside of Louisiana. So back to our service question, sorry. So in North Georgia, when you drive to North Georgia, you see all of these small solar farms. They all have solar panels. Not as large as I've seen pictures of in West Baton Rouge, but most of them have area where farming. So they belong to a farming co-op that sells the energy that they are generating to an electricity. They don't have a lot of outside investors. This is part of the place-based state of Georgia. Do we have anything like that on the table, or do we have anything like that in Louisiana?
So your question is, started with children and visiting out of state, but I have to comment on that because my wife moved my daughter into University of Southern California last Thursday, and so she's flourishing. She thought she was super liberal, and now she realizes, I think I'm more like, I miss my family, and I like Louisiana. So it's working out like we planned. And but my sister, who has 4 adult daughters, says, and they moved away. As a matter of fact, 2 of them went to Georgia. She said, Craig, I would try to travel to them once a month, wherever they were, and she called it watering the plants. She had to water her plants. Take them to the grocery store, let them cry, plan the next trip. So I think your analogy is very good. I'll tell you, on the public service side, and Georgia has had some colossal and expensive failures in the energy space. And so they have, particularly in nuclear, it was a couple billion overestimate. But the solar space is interesting. I'm a conservative. I think the conservatives ought to lead the conservation talk with ideas. I think this should be an idea meritocracy and not just opposite of what our opponents think. And so in that space, there's some emerging and very positive things happening with renewables, with solar, and mainly what you referred to was something called risk transfer. So right now, what the large companies and the co-ops were having to do was say, convince 3 out of 5 Louisiana politicians that building something very expensive is a good idea. If you can imagine how Louisiana politics works, right? And what's now coming into the picture is risk transfer. So is there a way for someone else to pay for it? It gets put on this energy grid in a market, and eventually the people that use it pay for it, but not one cluster of people paying for something. So recently you may have heard in Ventris, Louisiana, which is near where I went to high school, McDonald's and eBay are funding a huge solar project. And what they get for it in return are carbon credits. And so a lot of electrons are going onto the grid, and none of the people, we're not paying directly for it, we'll pay for a portion of it that we use. And so that particularly is interesting to me because it's taking the risk. I remember there was a wind project, it was an Oklahoma wind project right after the Tax Cut and Jobs Act passed, and somebody had to grab the tax credits, so this large energy company was trying to get us to vote for an Oklahoma wind project that was going to be a $1 billion transmission line. And so it came down to me asking the CEO on public record, can you guarantee savings to our Louisiana ratepayers, and if so, in what year? And all they could say was, I predict in year 22, but I cannot guarantee. And I was the only no vote. That's not good enough for me. And so it ended up failing. But to answer your question, there are a lot of things like that we're just trying to stir up the conversations. I'll close with one story, and this is taking the hint here. The young man gets married, and he asks his wife at Thanksgiving goes to cook a ham, and she cuts the 2 ends off, puts it in the pot, puts it in the oven. He goes, foolishly, he says, why do you do that? And she goes, that's the way my mama did it. And he more foolishly says, is that the only reason? And she goes, yeah. So they go to the mom's house next, and she does the same thing. And he asks her, why do you do that? And she goes, that's the way my mom did it. So go to the grandma's house, and she wasn't cooking, but he goes, your daughter and your granddaughter both cut the ends off, put it in the pot, put it in the oven. They say they do that because that's the way you did it. Why did you do it that way? And she goes, oh, baby, back then we didn't have pots big enough. And the whole point is we have a cornucopia of pots and pans now to think about things differently than we've ever thought about them, to try to make it better for the kids of ours that go out of state to hopefully come back. Thank y'all for having me.
Meeting is adjourned.